Well, the city of Grand Rapids is encouraging its residents to apply for their boards and commissions positions. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm News 8 digital anchor Luke Laster here from the Wood TV live desk. Joining me this morning is the 2nd Ward Commissioner here in Grand Rapids, Milinda Ysasi. Commissioner, good morning. Thanks for taking the time, and happy Friday to you.
Thanks, Luke. Thanks for the invitation.
You betcha. So tell me a little bit about your background here before we get rolling and why you became a commissioner.
Well, you know, it's pretty fitting that I became pretty knowledgeable about commission by serving on a board and commission for the city of Grand Rapids back in 2006. When I was working at Cascade Engineering, I joined the Civilian Appeals Board because my employer was very much focused on how do we engage in community, and this was one of those ways that I first got involved. And since that time, I've served on a variety of boards, which ultimately led me to decide to run for office. And now I am doing that as one of the 2nd Ward Commissioners and serving as the chair of our Committee on Appointments.
Can you explain just the process of it all, from the idea of actually running through the application process, selection, things along those lines, from point A to point B to point C?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. I think sometimes it's the most basic questions that can trip people up of if I want to do this or not. And much like when you're applying for other things like a job, I tell people, go in on the link on our website. If you go to the City of Grand Rapids website, go to our clerk's office, it'll take you, there's a couple of drop downs. I think it's a 3rd drop down where it says boards and commissions. And there it'll talk about where you need to click to apply. So what you're going to fill out is called a personal information form, and it's going to ask some questions so we can get a sense of who is applying, where do they live, what is their background. Sometimes people submit a resume, and then they can see all of those openings that we have, and we have a number of them. We've had great response since you all first ran the news story, and continue to have people in that process. What I think might not always be known is that it does take a little bit of time, because there is what's called a vetting process. So we do need to review to see if there's any debts or arrears owed to the city of Grand Rapids. Sometimes you find out about, oh, I have a couple of parking tickets, or especially during the pandemic with income tax and people, their employment status and things like that being in fluctuation. You might have to resolve a few of those things with our city treasurer, income tax department before you can be considered fully for the board. So what I tell people is if you haven't heard anything and you have a question, you can always reach out to our city clerk's office and find out what's going on. Because there are some things that we as commissioners are not privy to, because we want to make sure that people's personal information stays with just them and that appropriate city department. And then, a lot of it too is a communication and conversation. We might reach out to individuals, ask them a little bit more. Sometimes people select 3 or 4 boards that they might be on, so we might call them to see where is this narrowed down. And then from there, some of the boards are a mayoral appointment, so it would go through Mayor Bliss. Some of them are commission appointments, like myself and my colleagues. Some of them could also be City Manager Mark Washington appointments. So, the interesting thing is there's a lot of ways to get involved. Over 250 people help us right now to serve on these boards, so we can seek the advice and consent of others as we're making really important decisions in our city.
Tell me I want to hear a little bit about your individual experience. Tell me some of your biggest takeaways since you've been a part.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned that first board that I was on back in 2006, which is a long time now, but I've also served on our Civil Service Board, which is essentially an HR oversight board that works in conjunction with our Director of HR and our other city departments that are focused on the hiring and promotion of individuals. And that was a great board because I had an HR background before coming a city commissioner and before, now being an executive director of a nonprofit. And so I was able to take that background of HR and understanding of employment contracts and be able to apply it to support the city. Sometimes there's also boards that are more advisory. So I've been on boards for the hiring and attraction of talent into the city. I think my husband also serves on the Board of Zoning Appeals, which is a board that if things go to our planning department and they're denied, they can apply for an appeal process, and that's what's considered a quasi-judicial board. So there's a lot of different, it really is what I think, matching up what your best skill sets are, the kind of work you like to do. My husband's board is a little bit more nuanced and structured. I like the ones where it's probably a little bit more advisory and discussion. And so figuring out what's your best background, what are your skill sets, how much time that you have. Some boards take a little bit more time than others. Our planning, department and our planning commissioners give up, usually half a day, sometimes full days to do that work of the planning Planning Commission regarding the land use in city. And other boards could be an hour, every couple months or every quarter. So it's about pinpointing what would be the best fit for right now. And I think the best thing is we've got some great city staff that are the liaisons to this board. And so there's always a great onboarding process to make sure that people feel that they're going to be successful on this board.
What's the toughest part of it, in your opinion? Whether it's you or your husband, you mentioned, who's very involved as well. It sounds like if you guys have talked about that, what's the toughest part of it?
I think the toughest part about being on a board or commission is sometimes there's parameters, right? There are just realities of things that certain boards can do or not do that are governed by state legislature, that are governed by the type of body it is. Sometimes you are having to say no to people. I know that's the case, on the BZA or the Planning Commission, and maybe that doesn't feel good, but you're adhering to sort of what are the rules and regulations associated with different things. Sometimes I think it could be that you want to have more time to focus on issues. I think that when I was on the Civil Service Board, there was a big undertaking that we did a few years back, which was our compensation that we did for the city of Grand Rapids to help determine, was our compensation appropriate for the type of organization we are? And it felt like there was never enough time to do that. And we hadn't done that in like 20 years, so it was a historic thing as well. But what I can say is whether or not you want to be a commissioner, whether or not you might want to work at city government one day, being on a board or commission can give you such insight into just the operations of the city. And I'm so grateful that my employer saw it as a professional development tool for me back in 2006. And so I encourage not only people to apply, but if you are an employer, if you are a business and you're wanting to make sure you're plugged in community, think about this process as something that is a value add to your organization.
Kind of on the flip side of the previous question I just asked, what's one of the biggest impacts you feel that you have made that you would share with someone who was maybe thinking about applying or getting involved?
I think that we all want to have a great impact in our community. We want to make sure that we're making decisions with everybody in mind. We want to make sure that different people's voices are heard if they maybe don't have time to do that. And so that was what was always most impactful for me, is that I had the privilege and the time and the support of employers or other people to say, Milinda, you can carve out a few hours every month, or you can carve out. So I, in a sense, felt like I was doing it also for people who wanted to, but maybe just did not have that time and space to. So that impact is you carry that you're doing this not for just yourself, but also for other people who'd like to serve in the future.
And one more time, you mentioned it at the beginning, but if we had some more viewers kind of flow in there, where do you go to apply?
Yeah, so if you would like to apply to one of our boards or commissions for the city of Grand Rapids, if you go to our city website, I just Google City of Grand Rapids appointments, City of Grand Rapids boards and commissions, and then it'll take you to our city clerk's page, and you'll be able to go to the bottom of the page. I believe it's the third drop down where it says boards and commissions, and it'll have information not only about the vacancies, it'll have descriptors about the kind of boards, and it will also have the link to what's called the PIF, or the personal information form, that people can fill out to apply. And if they have any questions, which I think people often do, is they can reach out to our city clerk's office, or I'm happy to reach out to anybody, and my information is also on the city page as well.
Any other closing thoughts that you'd like to add?
Service is one of the best things that we can do. When we, I think a lot of times people feel frustrated, or they are unsure about things in their community. And for me, jumping in and saying I want to be part of systems and structures and processes so that I can become a little bit more knowledgeable and be a little bit more supportive has helped me to feel more connected to this wonderful city.
Commissioner, we appreciate your time. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a link attached to the stream. It'll take you over to woodtv.com. If you missed our conversation, or maybe are just catching it here on the tail end, you'll be able to watch it back there. Commissioner Ysasi, we appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Folks, again, head over to woodtv.com to find that full conversation. Have a great afternoon. I'm News 8 digital anchor Luke Laster, here from the Wood TV Live Desk, folks. We'll see you around.
Thanks, Luke.